Good afternoon, everybody. This is Brian Tully. Welcome to our next edition of the Senior Advocacy Forum. We have a good program today, a very helpful program today. But like always, I'll give you a couple more minutes for people to log on, and then I'll be able to join you back and we'll get started. Thank you. All right, everybody, welcome back. We're going to get started right now in our this month's episode of the Senior Advocacy Forum. And the forum is our monthly webinar series where we kind of share insights with leading professionals dealing with legal matters, financial care matters, wellness issues. And I've enjoyed doing it. We've met some great experts in their fields. We've been able to learn some information, and I've heard afterwards for the last couple of years we've been doing this type of a model, that these are very helpful. So what I'm going to do is turn off the screen there and introduce our guest for today, Megan Shergill. Megan is an expert in what is called consumer directed. She is the Vice President of CDPAP Services, and we'll get into that and explain all that today, with Community Care Healthcare Services. She helps promote both independence to New Yorkers by providing education, tools, opportunity to enroll in the CDPAP with community care. And it's an alternative home care program for individuals who have Medicaid. Megan began her career in healthcare over 14 years ago, first starting as a direct support professional with individuals with special needs and providing them with physical assistance and activities of daily living within their home environment and within facilities. She then transitioned into the home care industry, having served in roles ranging from scheduling coordinator, then operations manager, then director, and now ultimately she's the Vice President of CDPAP Services with Community Care Home Care Services. I've known Megan for a number of years, and she knows this inside and out. So for those of you with loved ones in the home care world, receiving services, in need of services, not only are we a great resource for you, but so is Megan and Community Care. So we're going to have a bunch of questions and a good discussion with Megan. If you have any questions at all for us, for either myself or Megan, put them into the chat box and we'll be able to answer them later. The beauty of that is that we can kind of flow through our material, and that way we can be mindful, of course, of your questions and try to give you as much help as possible. All right, so Megan, where are you? I got to move my screens. There we go. All right. Again, it's great to have you. Great to see you in person, so to speak.
Thank you so much, Brian. And what a warm introduction. Oh my goodness. If only I could have you introduce me at all of my dinner parties with that intro. That was so kind.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. So first and foremost, and as we were advertising and getting this out, not everybody knows what CDPAP is or consumer directed is. So tell us, what exactly is consumer directed?
Sure. So first, I just want to say my last name is pronounced Shergill, and I like to say share because I'm sharing information. So Shergill. So
I knew
CDPAP.
that.
It's
Yeah.
of course it was fine, but that's a good way for you just to remember that I'm just an educator and an advocate. And Brian, you know this. I've
Yeah.
worked with your
Yeah.
team for a number of years.
Sure.
So CDPAP. It's an acronym. CDPAP. It stands for the Consumer Directed Personal Assistance Program,
Hmm.
which is a Medicaid-funded home care program that works as an alternative to traditional home care services, which
Right.
allows individuals to have autonomy and independence, choosing their own caregivers, training their caregivers,
Mm.
coordinating their shifts, their schedules, and monitoring the work that they do. And ultimately, it's really to keep people out of facility settings like nursing homes, assisted
Yeah.
livings, rehabs. It's in hospital settings, of course. It's to keep
Mm.
people aging in place within their homes.
Got it. So and I always explain this with clients. So just because the idea of consumer. So the family is the consumer, right?
So when you say consumer, the definition is actually the individual with Medicaid receiving the home care services. So the
Right.
consumer directed personal assistance program. The
Right.
consumer directs the home care services, and then their caregiver is actually known as a personal assistant, which who doesn't want to have a personal assistant, which is quite nice. And this program was actually developed in New York State back in the 1970s by a
Hmm.
group of individuals who were physically disabled. So think of individuals who had MS, Parkinson's, they were
Hmm.
paralyzed, and they wanted essentially to have a little bit more ownership over directing their home care services and have
Hmm.
the home care agency have more of like a hands-off approach. So they
Hmm.
developed the CDPAP program in New York State in the 70s. And since then, every single state in the United States now has a consumer directed home care program. They all just have different acronyms.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's awesome. I never knew that. I
Yeah,
never knew
listen, I have a lot of fun facts, Brian.
that.
But a nice fun fact is California actually has the highest volume of individuals using consumer-directed services, and
Interesting.
they have
Mhm.
49% of
Wow.
individuals throughout the nation using it. I love my statistics,
Yeah.
and their acronym is actually known as IHSS, in-home support services,
Got
but
it.
also BYOC, bring your own caregiver, which is so cute.
That's funny.
But since then, of course, Florida, because of the high like elderly
Sure.
population, has flourished with this program.
Hmm.
And so when we go back to the consumer directing their services, if the
Right.
consumer is considered to be alert and oriented, they can act as the boss of their home
Right.
care services. So just like how this program started by a group of individuals who were physically disabled, they
Hmm.
had physical ailments, but they were
Hmm.
still alert and oriented. But however, this program also still is great for even individuals with dementia or Alzheimer's, or even the special needs community who
Right.
perhaps are not defined as alert and oriented for whatever reason,
Hmm.
but instead they can have someone else act as their designated representative,
Hmm.
acting as the boss of their home care services in place of that
Right.
consumer. And then that way, it reduces the amount of strangers coming into the home.
Good.
Because in theory, you
Hmm.
could have an adult child enroll into this program and act as the caregiver for their aging parent.
Right. So the consumer doesn't have to be the recipient of Medicaid because of capacity concerns.
Hmm.
So it could be a healthcare agent, right?
Correct.
Under a healthcare proxy. It
Hmm.
could be a family member, right? Under the
Correct.
Family Healthcare Decisions Act, they could make those decisions.
Hmm.
Now, what are they directing them in? What does that
Good
mean?
question. So essentially, they're acting as the boss of home care services. So they're choosing their caregivers.
Hmm.
They're training them with the work that has to be done. So there's
Hmm.
no nurse supervision in CDPAP. So the home care agency is never going to send a nurse out to the home. So it's up to the consumer
Hmm.
or the designated representative to train the caregiver with how to do the certain tasks.
Right.
Meaning, if they have like Hoyer lift needs or
Right.
ventilator care needs, tracheotomy, I always say not everyone is right for CDPAP services because there is a heightened level of responsibility for the
Sure.
consumer or the family, but at the very least, people should know that it's an option available to them.
Right. Right. Okay. So then we practically saw it from the elder care law firm side. We see it as a benefit in a lot of circumstances. I mean, ultimately, the family decides, do we go the home care agency route or do we go the consumer directed route? Those are the choices that families have to make.
Exactly.
Now we found this to be very helpful during, of course, the pandemic, right?
Mhm.
That was a big circumstance where this was helpful because a lot of the aides and the agencies were slowing down, or those folks were quarantined themselves. So did you see that as well? And what other circumstances does this fit well to?
I love this question. So
Yeah.
essentially the question is, who's a good candidate for these
Yeah.
services, right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely people who want to reduce the amount of people coming in and out of their homes for whatever
Mm.
reason, you know, right?
Okay.
To your point, like the pandemic,
Yep.
or even individuals who, like I said, have a diagnosis of like dementia or Alzheimer's, who
Mm-hmm.
perhaps have like enhanced behaviors if
Mm.
different people keep coming in and out of their house. So if
Yeah.
you want to reduce the amount of people coming in and out of the home, you
Mm-hmm.
can enroll then someone who's already familiar with that individual to be their
Right.
caregiver.
Good.
Additionally, people living in rural areas are great candidates for this
Mm-hmm.
program because someone already living within the home can enroll to be the caregiver, or a neighbor or a friend or a church member. And when you
Right.
think of traditional home care services, typically the home care agency is sending a certified caregiver to someone's home, but that certified caregiver typically is taking public transportation to
Right.
get to the home. So, you know, when the further out East End on Long Island that you go, or upstate New
Right.
York, it gets more and more challenging, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
the last pool of people that I would say that are great candidates for CDPAP services are individuals with enhanced medical needs, like
Okay.
skilled, they have the requirement for some skilled nursing tasks.
Yeah.
So another fun little fact, Brian, within the scope of practice of what's permitted within CDPAP services, meaning
Mm-hmm.
what can the caregivers assist with, it
Right.
includes personal care, assisting with activities of daily living, like
Mm-hmm.
everything that you and I do in the morning that we take for granted, right? Grooming, dressing, bathing, meal preparation,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah. Yeah.
But beyond that, in CDPAP, the caregivers are also allowed to do some skilled nursing tasks,
Right.
including medication administration,
Yeah.
wound care,
Yeah.
tracheotomy care, feeding
Right.
tube, ostomy, and ventilator care.
Yeah. Now the beauty of that is because typical home care, personal care aides through an agency are not allowed to do that.
Correct.
So this is a prime opportunity if there is that medical need in addition to the custodial needs. CDPAP is a great alternative to allow your loved one to stay at home, which is
Brian, think
fantastic.
about how many families your team helps that they say like, oh, the home health aide can't administer eye drops for mom, or
Right.
they can't administer the insulin injection.
Insulin. Yeah.
They're not allowed, right? But with CDPAP, they are permitted.
Yep. And they could even drive. Right.
Exactly,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
So
And they
there's
have flexibility with their schedules. And
right.
because I don't know about you, but my weeks are not the same week over week. You and I were just talking about how next month is going to be crazy for you.
Yeah.
So our schedules
Mm-hmm.
are not the same week over week. With
Mm-hmm.
CDPAP, you're approved a weekly bank of hours, and then you can schedule the shifts to your liking as long
Right.
as you don't go over the weekly bank of hours.
Got it. So tell me who can serve as the aide. Now you had mentioned children, so talk a little bit more about
Yeah.
that.
So first, there's really four different communities that benefit from CDPAP
Okay.
services. It's the physically disabled community, which is
Mm-hmm.
how CDPAP started, and
Yep.
then it's the elderly
Mm-hmm.
community.
Sure.
And when you think of the elderly community, it's typically the adult children who act as the caregivers for their
Mm-hmm.
aging parents.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's the special needs community. When
Mm-hmm.
an individual with special needs is 21 years old, their parent can actually be enrolled to be their caregiver to get
Mm-hmm.
paid for doing the things that they're already doing.
Right.
And a great fun fact, Brian, is there is no minimum or maximum age for who can receive CDPAP home care services.
Could
So we
receive. Okay.
yeah, so we
Very good.
literally have like 4-year-olds on our program versus 104-year-olds on our program. So
Wow.
there's no minimum or maximum age. However, to my point that I just said, if an individual with special needs wants to receive care from their parent, having their
Mm-hmm.
parent act as their caregiver, they have to
Mm-hmm.
be 21 for their parent to
Okay.
be the caregiver.
Okay.
And then that fourth population that really benefits from CDPAP
Mm-hmm.
services is the medically fragile population
Mm-hmm.
because of those skilled nursing tasks that the caregivers are allowed to do. So again, like the ventilator care, wound
Right.
care, trach, things like that.
So a spouse can do it, a parent can do it, a
So
child.
actually, so it's easier for me to tell you who
Yeah, go
can't
ahead.
be the caregiver because essentially a lot, the majority of people can act as the
Yeah. So who
personal
can't?
assistant who can't. A spouse, a legal spouse cannot.
Yeah.
However, we do have some people who are just, like lifetime partners, but they're not legally married.
Okay.
So,
They
so
can.
Exactly. So a legal spouse cannot act as the caregiver. And then, of course, they have to be an adult, at least
Mhm.
18 years old, and they have to
Mhm.
be eligible for employment in the United States.
Understood. Understood. Okay. So that means a child can do it. Child can get paid for helping take care of mom.
Exactly. And so think of it this way, even if there's a special needs individual who's maybe like little Johnny, who's 10 years old and he's
Mhm.
eligible for home care services, his
Right.
adult sibling, who's at least 18 years old, can act as his caregiver until
Mm.
he's 21 when mom and dad can enroll to be
Can
his
do it.
caregiver. Yeah.
Very
So
interesting way to
there's
work
just
through that. Yeah.
there's so many populations that really benefit from this program.
And you can have more than one during the week?
Yes,
Okay.
we
Okay.
actually encourage hire as many people as you can,
Yeah.
because if your primary personal assistant, that
Mhm.
primary caregiver, calls out for whatever reason, they're sick, weather emergency, etc.,
Mhm.
it's up to the consumer or that
Mhm.
designated representative to have a backup caregiver already
Wow.
enrolled, right, to staff the shift.
Yeah, yeah. So what we see often circumstances, and just had a client yesterday, the family might be paying privately for an aide
Hmm.
for a couple months, maybe a year or two, and mom doesn't want to get rid of that aide.
Hmm.
And if they're legally able to work in the United States, then we can transition into the community Medicaid, this CDPAP program, and they get to keep the aide and shift the burden from the family to the Medicaid program, right?
Exactly, exactly. Because the alternative is, if that caregiver is not considered to be certified as a personal care attendant or a home health aide, they
Mhm.
can't transition over to work under traditional home care services.
Right,
So that caregiver, the only option then, if of course that caregiver is eligible for employment in the United States, to
right.
enroll into CDPAP to be a personal assistant. And then
Mhm.
that way there's no lapse in services, no
Right.
lapse in who, mom or dad already knows, loves, and trusts.
That's right.
It's
That's
a
right.
really great program.
Huge. And you mentioned a very important point earlier. I want to reiterate is you're limiting perhaps who's coming into the home.
Hmm.
And again, that was a big pandemic benefit. And there's still reasons for that to happen. So
Right.
that's another big plus. Cool. So the what we're calling this is it's an alternative home care program.
Correct.
Um, and it's nationwide. Each state has their own version of it.
Hmm.
Um, I think, and we've had good reports with the families. They seem to appreciate the program as long as they've got their primary and secondary people lined up. So, do you find New Yorkers they really thrive with the program? It benefits them.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Oh,
I,
cool.
I always say, if you're a type A personality, much like myself, you'll benefit from this program,
Yeah.
because, like I said before, not everyone's right for this program. If you're easily overwhelmed and already inundated with too many other things going on, perhaps this is not right for you, because you do have to direct the care, right? You
Yeah.
have to act as the boss. But
Yeah.
if you like to be that helicopter family member, so to speak,
Hmm.
and if you want to reduce the amount of people coming through the revolving door, this is
Hmm.
the right program for you.
Awesome. Good. 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 Now, the let's go back to that scenario I just shared that we have a family with their own home care aide. Perhaps it was somebody from down the block, and perhaps they're retired and they used to do it. They know what they're doing. Um, how do they end up getting paid from New York? So what connects that worker that may be paid by cash or check, right, for a year or two? What connects them to Medicaid? How do they become enrolled in the program?
I love that question. So I like to tell families to try to visualize like an upside down triangle. At the very
Mhm.
tippy top is New York State Medicaid dollars, and then
Right.
the funnel goes down. So
Mhm.
first it's New York State Medicaid dollars, and then New York State pays one of two payer sources, either the local Department of Social Services
Mhm.
or a managed long-term care insurance plan
Mhm.
like Visiting Nurse Service, Aetna,
Yep,
Fidelis. You've heard of them before.
of course.
So depending on the criteria of the individual needing home care services, they're going to fall into one of those pockets, either the local Department of Social Services or the insurance plan. Those two different pockets then pay the money towards a home care agency. It gets funneled
Mhm.
down to a home care agency,
Right.
much like community care, which is where I work. And
Yeah.
the home care agencies that provide CDPAP services are known as FIs, fiscal intermediaries, which
Okay.
essentially just means that we process the payroll for the
Mhm.
caregivers.
Okay.
So our role is just simply kind of like back of the house administrative, processing the
Mhm.
payroll, and then the
Mhm.
families get to direct the care.
Right.
then that money gets funneled down then to the caregiver. And now the caregiver can only get that payment if they simply enroll into our home care agency. And the great thing about community care is enrollment can be done 100% remotely if you'd like. Not that people don't want to see my face, Brian, and come into the office, but I mean, everyone's very busy.
Yeah,
So everyone has the choice of enrolling remotely via like a DocuSign. They just click a link and then just submit the required items as per New York State Department of Health, like a direct deposit form, tax forms, things like that. And then people then enroll into our home care services. And a common question that we have is, how long does enrollment take? And it's never a one size fits all, as you know, Brian. It's like everyone has their own journey. And we've literally had families enroll within a matter of 3 hours versus a week versus months. And it always is directly dependent on the sense of urgency from the family.
Sure.
Because we're eager, you
We're
know?
right here. We're ready to go.
Exactly. So it always just depends on how quickly they get us the information that is required.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. So now community care, you guys have been around for a while. The CDPAP division, if you will, that's just one part. What else does community care do?
I like to say that we are a continuum of care. We provide many different facets of home care services because not everybody's right just for CDPAP services. So we also do provide companion level services, which is actually how we started many, many years ago, just as companion level services. Then we also do provide the traditional home care services paid privately or through Medicaid, meaning we provide the personal care attendants or the home health aides, as well as some skilled nursing care. Specifically in school districts, and then lastly CDPAP, which is the one that I love and it's near and dear to me. Yes.
I hear you. Good, good, good. All right. So we is there anything else you want to share? Because I want you to share for sure how people can contact you. The website, the phone number, and then I'll see if we have any questions because we've covered a lot of the good points. But how can people reach out to you?
Sure. So one of the first things I just want to mention, Brian, is I don't know if you know how many home care agencies there are alone in New York State right now that provide CDPAP services. If you've heard my presentations before, Brian, you should know this.
I'll tell you, it's not many, right?
No, actually, no, quite the opposite. So there's actually 800 home care agencies in New York State alone that provide CDPAP services.
That act as FIs.
Correct. However, the state did just implement something called an RFO, a request for offers, which significantly reduced the size, or I should say the volume of home care agencies because it was out of control. There was no licensing process, application process previously. So Brian, I truly could have just been like, let's open up a CDPAP FI in my basement, and the state would have been none the wiser. So that was a concern. So there was 800. Now there's going to be approximately 68 or so. So I always recommend to families, when you're shopping around for a home care agency for CDPAP services, you're going to see TV commercials, radio commercials, etc. There's many to choose from, but I always recommend that families do their due diligence and simply go on Google and look up the Google reviews. So you can search community care home health services Smithtown, because that's where our corporate office is, and you'll see as of this morning, I believe we have 336 reviews and a 4.8 out of 5-star rating. And that is something to be very proud of because, Brian, as you know, people tend to only leave reviews when they're dissatisfied, not satisfied. So I just always recommend that people shop around, and you want to make sure that the agency you enroll into not only provides you a great benefits package for your caregivers, because that's very important, but that they're accessible, responsive, and knowledgeable. Because at the end of the day, they could be promising to pay you $1 or $2 more compared to another agency, but how do you know that they're going to pay you timely and accurately if they're not responsive from the get-go during the onboarding process?
Got to go through look at the whole package for sure.
Exactly.
For sure. Great point. Great point. And then how can people contact you?
Oh, yes. So you can simply go to our website, communitycarecdpap.com.
Okay.
You can also just look us up on Google. You'll see our reviews. And you can also email us at cdpap@communitycarehhs.com. But I'm sure that they can also reach out to your team and they'll connect. Yes.
Of course. But that was Community Care HHS for Home Health Services.
Correct.
.com.
Yep.
Okay,
Correct.
Cool. Well, Megan, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. You are a guru, as I called you the other day in this area.
You're the best, Brian. Thank you.
Let's see if we got any questions. We do. We've got a couple here. So mom is currently enrolled in CDPAP. She has dementia, and we're considering moving to a nursing home transition and diversion program, which is another program still within the home. We've been told that we can get aids through NHTD. Can we maintain CDPAP with NHTD?
Yes, that's a little known fact that individuals who are under a waiver program like NHTD, OPWDD, or TBI, they have two paths. They can choose either CDPAP services or traditional PCA HHA level of services.
Right. Very good. Good. Another question. How do you prevent, this is a broad question, Bonnie. How do you prevent senior abuse? Who oversees the caregiver? So I've got my own take on it, but go ahead. Yeah.
Sure, I'll give my take first. So who oversees the caregiver? It's the individual who is taking charge of directing the care. So it's either the consumer, if they're alert and oriented, or that designated representative. And that's why I said in the beginning, not everyone's right for CDPAP services, because you have to take on that ownership of ensuring that everyone's safe and that you can direct your care.
Right. And maybe you can tell me what the number is, but I would think that a good amount of those that enroll in CDPAP are employing family, or at least people they know. Right. So I would imagine that this might even be, I'm not saying it is, but it might be if you're dealing with family as the aide, there should be less incidents, you'd like to think, of any type of abuse. Okay.
So Brian, I started my career on the traditional home care side in operations. And of course I heard horror stories with some of the certified caregivers for whatever reason. But with CDPAP, it's about 80% of individuals that we support that enroll their family members to be their caregivers.
Right.
And you're right, it enhances, trust and peace of mind and privacy. So it's a win-win.
Good. Agreed. Just another statement confirming that a spouse could not be eligible. We just spoke about that.
Correct.
Does the home healthcare agency benefit? Right. So I'm assuming they get paid. They're the intermediary. So the money from the state flows through them. So that's the question. I mean,
I just do this for the goodness of my own heart. Yes, of course. So we're paid through Medicaid. It's a small sum, and all we're compensated for is just to process the payroll for the caregivers.
Got it. Okay. Another question is, my dad is in a skilled nursing / rehab. So Anthony, that could mean different things. Is CDPAP an option for him? So just to say, Anthony, if he goes home, it is. But bottom line though, Megan, CDPAP is for community services, not for services within a facility.
Correct. Think of it this way. Medicaid will only ever pay for a facility stay, like a hospital or a rehab, or for community-based long-term home care services. So one or the other. But I can also help identify if individuals are good candidates for home care services, just in general, whether it's CDPAP or traditional, because Brian, I know individuals have to prove during a New York State assessment that they need physical assistance with at least 3 activities of daily living in order to be approved for home care services. And as a courtesy, our team actually helps prepare families for those New York Independent Assessor assessments for best outcomes.
Right. Good. And of course, what we do with our nurses and our care coordinators and our social workers on staff, it's all about making sure, and you guys do the same thing, that the clients are getting the best care that they possibly can.
Exactly.
All right. So next question, and Anthony, if you have other question about that, you can reach out separately. Do the caregivers who go through CDPAP need special qualifications?
So the individual just has to be at least 18 years old to be the caregiver and eligible for employment in the United States. And then there's actually no training or certification required by New York State Department of Health, other than certain in-service topics that are required on an annual basis, which include things like harassment training, electronic visit verification training to log hours worked, as well as cultural competency training. But other than that, there is no other training.
Very good. Last question I'm seeing here. Is your company like an MLTC or a licensed home healthcare agency?
This person knows their acronyms. I'm impressed. Yes. So we're similar to a licensed home care service agency. Community Care actually does have the licensed home care side, but we're considered to actually be the FI, the fiscal intermediary for CDPAP services.
Right. Excellent. Okay. Wonderful. All right. So Megan, I want to say thank you. It was a pleasure as always. I look forward to seeing you at another event. Any questions, folks, that you have, reach out to Megan directly, or feel free to reach out to us and we can connect you. And I will see you around soon.
What a pleasure, Brian. Thank you. Take care.
Well.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.